What would you share, John, then about why get certified as a life coach? Like, what's the value in it?
Yeah, when I went through, and this is back in 2007. So I started training in 2005. I finished my training in 2007. And at that point, the ICF was around a dozen years old. It really was the premier certification body. It still is. And a lot of HR managers and directors are looking for an ICF certification to hire people. There's also the health board that Coach Training EDU is going after. And that's really exciting. That's relatively new. I think it's 2 or 3 years old. Yeah, they have a relationship with basically the health board that also looks at and certifies insurance companies or has a relationship with insurance companies. So people who get health board certified, they can charge some insurance through some codes, which is a big deal for the coaching world. So finally, there's a way that you can, I mean, that's a huge like earthquakeness thing happening in health and wellness coaching. And more universities are now offering coaching as well. So I think what's going to happen, so basically the thing that certification in my mind does two things. One, it makes sure that you really are doing best practices as a coach. And then two, it tells people that you have done the work. It's a communication, it's a marketing tool. And but I think both are priceless whenever you're thinking about, is this really going to be your full-time profession? You need both. And if you don't have both, I mean, if you don't have either, people do it. I'm amazed. Part of me is just in awe. I'm like, wow, how can you do that without training, without getting certified? That's hard. That's hard to do. I don't know. Not for me. I'd rather, if a wheel has already been invented, then just, grab it and then build from it, not try to invent the same thing that's already been invented. Yeah. That's my take on certification. What about you, Raj? I'm curious.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about this as well. I mean, more and more execs that I work with who don't want to go out and be full-time coaches necessarily, but are seeing the value in having coaching skills as a leader, are wanting to go and get certified, accredited from the ICF. So I'm seeing more and more of a trend in the people that I'm speaking to, and they don't want to wait, or they're thinking about, well, what am I going to do when I retire? And often senior leaders, when they retire, might want to look at consultancy, but more and more they want to look at coaching, and they want to start sooner rather than later adding those skills. And I think the other thing for me is, if I think about my own journey, I did a number of different courses and certifications, even before I found Coach Training EDU. But it wasn't until I did this program that it really took me to the next level. And also knowing that, it's an ICF accredited program. And I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that because we've got the boss here with us on this call. But I'm thinking about how it changed my life in doing the program. I mean, it also challenged some of the things that I thought I knew about coaching, because I had been coaching for a long time, and there's different models out there and different approaches, but also feeling like I'm part of something. So not only am I part of this team, I'm part of the alumni with Coach Training EDU. I am a member of the ICF. It kind of changes your status out there, and the credibility factor as well. And working with coaches who are looking at coaching opportunities outside of their business, it makes you more desirable. I know it makes people take notice when they like, oh, you've been through this program, you've got a certification, now you've got an accreditation with these letters after your name. ACC, super desirable, PCC, even more desirable, and then MCC, that is just super cool. But I just think about how many more opportunities are available to me now.
Right. Yeah, it really does open doors in the executive world and in the health and wellness world too. And I know that there are universities out there that want their academic advisors to all have an ACC, and they're promoting that. even the first school where we trained all of the faculty, Eagle Hill School in Massachusetts, they actively wanted all of their advisors, all of the residential advisors who were there to all be academic life coach certified. And that was a marketing point for them. And it also had an impact. And so when the pandemic came and all these students needed someone to talk to in a constructive way, the school had it. They were equipped, and it made a tangible difference in the student's experience. That's amazing when you think about the value of certification. Just isn't a marketing tool, but it does have very real, tangible, palpable impact. And that to me is the purpose of certification. When I went through my training, 2005, 2007, I got my PCC. I felt like I was the cat's meow, and then, all that kind of thing. Later on, when it was ready for Coach Training EDU to get ACTP accredited through the ICF, and we needed an MCC coach, I was there and I was thinking, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Like, I can get my MCC, no problems. So I went to, and you need to have an MCC mentor coach. So I contacted a couple of them and got, their quotes back on what it would cost. And I was thinking, this is wildly expensive, but whatever, I got to do it. I was so annoyed at that point because I had been coaching for so long. I had over 3,000 hours of coaching. I was running a coach training organization. I thought I knew what I'm doing right now. And so when I got there and I sent in my first overview to my mentor coach, he ripped it apart. Like, not even a little ripped it apart, but just like it was like watching a paper shredder just go, just destroyed my coaching. And part of it was that I wasn't doing a really great job of setting an agenda for the session. I relied so much on the workbook and worksheets that I created working with students that I forgot some of the fundamental stuff that I had maybe learned in my coach training, but maybe wasn't emphasized enough. And it was a while ago at this point, maybe 5-6 years ago, and I got into certain habits in my own coaching. So it really shook me to the core when I got that feedback from my mentor coach. And I remember thinking, going through the process of being so annoyed, horrified, angry, upset, doubtful, that whole downward journey, and then realizing that there was something here for me. There's a gift even in this process. And it just sort of flipped 180, where I felt at the beginning hyper annoyed, became extremely grateful for the level of, and what they were asking of me, to the level of that they were trying to get me to get to as an MCC coach. At that point, I realized, yeah, this is real. This certification matters. And it did make me a better coach. And I'm up for my renewal again. It's been 4 years since my last renewal. I think I'm on renewal 3. So I got to go do it again. I got to go get in, send them some recordings and things like that, which I'm looking forward to. I'm thinking that's a fun thing. So I think that coaches, when they go through our program and they think, okay, certification, they feel all the anxiety, all of the stress and pressure that I think comes from school. It's an old habit. It's jet lag from when people were in school and they felt like they had to perform really well on a test. They just have to let all that go and realize that, and really use the assessment as an information gathering tool, not as a judgment tool. And when people shift and look at the whole process as, how can I gather more information to make me a better coach? Like, I want the hard feedback. I actually actively, from this perspective, as weird as it is, you almost actively want to fail, because then you learn the most to get to, become even better. That's the perspective. And when at the MCC level, where I got to this, I remember I sent in 2 recordings. One failed. So I sent in 2 recordings. One of them passed, one of them failed. And so I had to send in a second one. And there was a timer. And part of it is just life in general. It's just so hard. And I had to get this done because I needed to get my program accredited. And it was pressure. Mm-hmm. And I remember the session that I was creating this, this recording for, and it was 50 minutes long. And about 20 minutes into it, I felt like I just was hanging on, as just barely hanging on. Like at some point in time, I'm just gonna be like, you know what? This is too intense. I don't know what I'm doing. I am sorry. I just need to hang up right now and go in my corner of my office and cry. Like I just need to like just take deep breaths, that kind of stuff. And I just felt like I was hanging on like Spider-Man, hanging on to two ends of the train at the same time, just hanging on to the sides of the room. And at that point in time, it really, this thought descended of, I don't care if this coaching passes this requirement or not. This conversation I'm having is A, changing his life, B, changing my life. And I couldn't give a rip if it passes their certification process or not. I'm going to send this one in. And when I got to that point, I knew that I had crossed some invisible line in myself, like some invisible milestone was passed. And I sent it in, and sure enough, it passed. And at that moment, I thought, that's the point. That's the point of certification, is to get to that, cross that finish line, cross that milestone, and then ask yourself, what's next? How can I get better? That's my take on certification.
Yeah. So there's a few things I'm taking away. I mean, there's a real surrender there, isn't there? Which some core motivation types can be harder than others, but this is just about that surrender, letting go. Yet the other thing for me, and I was thinking about not being complacent for me as well, because it's ongoing work, isn't it? You're not just one and done. Like you just talked about the renewal for you with the MCC, and I'm thinking about where I want to go next. I was writing down my goals, and I know I have to be mindful of keeping up and sharpening those coaching skills, because I am a consultant, I'm a trainer, I'm a mentor, I facilitate sessions, and those things can come easy, and wanting to be in that expert space all the time. I know that the greatest gift for me has been my own coaching, and to be able to stay in coach mode and not fall into bad habits, because if you don't use it, you lose it as well, don't you? You got to keep it sharp.
Yeah, I have a mountain bike coach who I link up with a couple times a season, and he'll get on there and he'll ride too, and sometimes it's these gap jumps and things I can't do yet. I just look at him and like that's there. He psychs himself up, does a couple of these jumps, and he finishes up and swings back around. And I asked him, what's that like? What's that like? And he said it's a door. Achieving those jumps it's a door that opens and closes. It's not always open to you. And I thought about that. It's just like, wow, like it's a little bit like riding. Coaching is a little bit like riding a bike, but it needs to be practiced, or else the door does close. It doesn't stay open all the time. And some of the hardest participants that we've trained, some of the participants who've had the hardest time in our training are those who have the most advanced education, the ones who have the degrees in counseling, the doctorates, all of the advanced training, because they have to put down a lot of the habits that they've built up. And coaching is different from therapy. It is different from being a mentor or a consultant. It requires a beginner's mind. It requires a openness, certain flexibility of emotion and thought to not get tied up on the surface, but to be able to hear what's happening like 2 or 3 levels below. Not in like let me analyze this way, but in a curious, childlike way. And that to me really, that to me is the essence of coaching. It's why I fell in love with the profession. And I fell in love with it from the client side, realizing, wow, this exploration makes me feel alive and empowered. It's still an exploration though. It's not it's not a let me tell you stuff. It is a true exploration. When I experienced the benefit of that, I thought, this is it. This is what needs to change the world. This kind of explorative, empathetic care is what was the missing ingredient. And I see it, like even, my mountain bike coach, when he does those jumps and he's like, yeah, he finds inner worlds in himself that have to get him there, to get over that innate fear of, yeah, I'm hitting a gap jump, you know, I either gotta go or not. But in the middle, that's the dangerous part.
Yeah. And the theme that I'm thinking, I mean, it requires vulnerability and humility as well, doesn't it? I mean, you have to forget the things that you think that you know, or the expert that you think that you are, or, you know, your own pride and ego. You have to be able to be open and vulnerable. And for me, I use the word humility because my ego can get the better of me. That's my shadow side. You know, I have to stay
I love
grounded.
the word humility. It has such beautiful Latin roots. It comes from the word humus, which means earth. And so it literally means being close to the ground. Like humility is being earth, being grounded, literally grounded. Yeah.
I love that.